Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
There it is.
There it is? Okay. Well, good afternoon. My name is Meng Mangu, along here with Dr. Becky Bolin, Dr. Yangki Zhou, Laura Miller. Laura Miller is our hort agent in Tarrant County. This is her second appearance. And also Erfang Wafai, our IPM specialist from East Texas. So today is the first one in May. Let's get started. And our first speaker today is, I wanna mention a little bit about this feedback that we got from you. So definitely, if you wanna provide more feedback, please do so. And also, based on the feedback, we are gonna do some special topics. We've already got 8 topics, more in-depth discussion on 8 topics already. So, watch for for the announcement on those. And then, Yangki, you ready? This is your Yangki. Dr. Zhou is going to talk about how to diagnose this disease.
Okay, so I have only one image that I want to talk about today. So this is, as you see it, this is a sports field, Bermuda grass, soccer field. And you can see those line, actually this line around the goal post in soccer field. And it's when you see this, it's very similar to playing too much on the surface. So surface kind of damaged by players. So which is it's very common on the sports field. And so you just first thing you can think about, you can you put some the fertilizers and the water to help to recuperate this damage and a lot of activity. So that's a pretty usually coming doing it. But in some cases, those symptom is not alleviated, and so throughout the summer is kind of growing, the symptom is growing, and the plants got very weak. This density was lost, and the plants not responds very well to with additional water and fertility as well. And also, for preventative approaches, you can add some the fungicide in there to potential any root disease can be taken care, but still there's symptom is increasing. So those kind of things happen, and you can has a trouble what's going on really. And so this is this field I was visited. It's just exactly the same thing that the superintendent did all the practice. They did it, and of course, it's in the middle of summer. We have dry and heat, so that makes sense. A lot of stress on the turf. So, is there any way we can improve this field? So, in general, the practice is already in place, and the one thing was missing at this field was I dig some holes and take some the Bermuda grass out of the roots, okay, and then I checking their sheath at the soil line, and actually I found the scale insect, which is rose-gray mealybugs in Bermuda grass. So this mealybug is usually cause problems in Bermuda grass, not much in the St. Augustine grasses or zoysia grasses. Are typically found in Bermuda grass because they like it is a kind of preferable host for the mealybug. It's very common when we got study in the greenhouse. We grow the Bermuda grass. We take out the sample from the field and then growing in the greenhouse a couple months, and easily the rosegrass mealybug is increased, and you find it very easily. So there may be low density, but in certain condition, which is very hot in the middle of summer, this population increase. And if you not identify and diagnose this in time, you end up with the Bermuda grass field with high infestation of this scale insects will damage your grass. And no typical symptom, no spot, is very similar to the common drought and the awareness, the wear by the player. So easily misdiagnosis of these scale insects. And if you never seen those scale insects in the Bermuda grasses, are there, you can see it, but it's a barely see it. I mean, they're also hide it underneath of the sheet, so it's easily miss those finding these insects. Okay, so once we find out the presence of the rosegrass mealybug, we put the proper insecticide, 1 or 2 times, then this grass starts recovering pretty quickly. So some of the the problem is associated with the different kind of pathogenic insects, and those not recognized until the stress like heat and wear and the drought can make this disease symptom is prominent. Okay, so I just want to emphasize proper diagnostic really important, and timely practice and the applications of the fungicide or insecticides will be really protect your grasses and save your money and turf as well. So that's all I have today.
Some mealybugs in turf. Wow. Erfang is going to talk about some more mealybugs in the greenhouse production, so we'll see that. So, I assume they look about the same. Maybe the grass mealybugs are slightly skinnier.
You can usually mealybug on the ornamental, you can easily see it. You see the honeydew produce, sticky stuff on the leaves, and then you kind of white scales, easily identify. But in the turf grass, the Bermuda grasses in the sport fields only 1 or 2 inches mowing height, and they're not staying on the top of the leaf. They're kind of hidden underneath of the sheath in the soil line. They never go out of. Maybe they're coming out in the night, and they kind of crawling short distance during the night, so you can't see those scales moving around. So that's why it's difficult to diagnose.
Okay, thank you. While you were talking about the mealybugs, I wanted to set the stage ready for Laura. Laura, you want to get started on this?
Sure. These are not mealybugs. This is a picture that the volunteers who went out to look at the rosette disease trial last week sent me. They were like, we found these and we don't know what they are. What are these? Also, just real quick on the little rosette disease update, that trial, this is round 3 of my resistance trials, and it has been in the ground for 26 months and has not shown any symptoms of RRD. So either the disease pressure has gone down quite a bit after the deaths of many roses, and maybe there's not as much disease pressure, or maybe we have some resistance, so we'll see. Anyway, this is just something that they saw and they were like, what are these? Mom, what do you see down there in that lower left corner there? Yeah. You're mute.
Oh, sorry. I see that my beloved crepe myrtle seed pod.
Yes, you do, because with the roses, there are some crepe myrtles, and that becomes important as we look at these. So I saw these and I was like, well, they're immature something. I'm like, I think they're immature stink bugs. I started looking at pictures of immature stink bugs, and then I got totally freaked out. So click to the next slide, please. I was like, oh no, that could be the dreaded brown marmorated stink bug. But so what did I do? I sent it to a real entomologist. So click another one. Because these are the brown marmorated stink bug juveniles. You see the resemblance to the bugs that they sent me, yeah. So click to the next one. I sent it to a real entomologist, Dr. Mike Merchant. And Mike Merchant, who maintains the fabulous City Bugs blog, which I hope will remain there forever and ever. But Mike was kind enough to look at them, and he identified them as, click to the next one there.
By the way, Dr. Baldwin thinks those are cute.
These are cute, yeah. This is an adorable little bug and so appropriate for the season. Mike calls this the mother bug. It's also called the white margined burrowing bug, and it is a stink bug. But and looking at it, you might go, well, that could be a plant-eating stink bug because it doesn't have like mean stink bug, pointy shoulders. I'm a predatory stink bug. It's just a little stink bug, and it is a plant-eating stink bug. But what it eats is really interesting. So you usually don't notice these or see much of them. They spend a lot of their life cycle pupating, but when the little immatures are out, it's usually right around Mother's Day. So that's why they often call it the mother bug. And there's a lot of little immatures, and what they're eating is kind of interesting. You want to click on over there. They do eat plants, but they mostly eat seeds, and they eat like small seeds, which I think maybe they were eating those crepe myrtle seeds. They eat, apparently a big part of their diet is henbit seeds, which are being produced right now. So it was quite interesting. So I guess you could kind of call them somewhat beneficial, maybe a little pre-emergent their treatment for your henbit for next year. Anyway, they're nothing to worry about. So once again, it was just an example of, you know, you see a lot of insects out there, and they're all kind of doing their thing. This one, Sahara cinctus, is really not doing anything bad. Unless I guess you were trying to produce henbit seed, in which case you might really want to get after these guys. So anyway, that's pretty much it for my little visit to the field that I didn't actually get to take, but that my volunteers were kind enough to go out and look at it for me. So that's it.
Sorry, my number 4 always wait until I do this webinar that she decides to poop, and then I have all the diapers and wipes in this room. So understood. That's just a little picture of the site with the roses and the crepe myrtles, and there's a little rose rosette for you in case you were wanting. Happy Mother's Day from the mother bug is so needed, and to all the mothers in the audience. Yes, happy Mother's Day. Elfrong, your turn.
All right. Okay, so you got it up on your computer?
Yes.
And just for all of the people who are currently viewing live, you might be seeing this red mark here on my forehead. And that's from headbutting some mealybugs earlier today. I actually had a little conflict with my standing desk as it was standing, and I was kneeling below it to grab some things from the printer and bonked my head. But anyway, so we
want you to know that, we together, specialists and horde agents, we work really hard to bring this information. And here's just a great example from Erfang. I mean, he's working really, really hard to the point that he's damaging himself. Thank you, Erfang.
That's right.
Hats off to you.
That's right. The sacrifices we make. Thank you so much. Yeah, so mealybugs are in this group, Pseudococidae, right? So pseudo being kind of like fake scale. They're fake in the sense that a lot of scale insects, females, lay kind of one clutch of eggs, and you oftentimes will die on it, like the crepe myrtle bark scale. Whereas mealybugs, the females, can produce multiple clutches of eggs, so they can just keep producing them. And the mealy refers to the fine powdery wax that covers that body, so that's a pretty distinct kind of feature. However, as we'll see here in a moment, there are some other insects that can have that white waxiness, so it's important to know that that exists, and not all white waxy things are mealybugs. It is a sucking insect pest, so it's going to produce honeydew, sooty mold, and if you get large populations, it can overwhelm the plant and obviously kill it. This is the type of insect that can be very hard to manage. So if you have some old stock with mealybugs, you can keep throwing expensive chemicals at it, or you can isolate and discard, which in many times might make more sense to just get rid of it, because it's going to be a source of mealybugs continually throughout your operation. Next slide. So I recently received a sample. Here we go. A sample of mealybugs you can see here on some coleus. Sorry, this is not, yeah, this was some coleus. And you can see here just, that white waxiness kind of all over. And oftentimes it helps to identify what type of mealybug it is, because that can give you an idea of what types of host plants it may infest. So again, this gives you an idea of what other plants near that coleus or whatnot in operation you should try and check out. Going to the next slide. So when we're trying to identify, it really helps to have some kind of head magnifying lens. You can just skip the video at this point. But it helps to have some kind of a hand magnifying lens to look for some of the distinguishing features. So some of the things we're looking at are some of these, what we refer to as terminal filaments. So on the left side there, you can see those filaments coming off of this mature mealybug, and the length, the number of them and so on and so forth can help identify mealybugs out in the field. So in this case, there's kind of like two long-ish, not very long. There's one called a long-tailed mealybug, and they're very long. This is just longer than the rest of the filaments on the rear, and that's usually a sign that's a Madeira mealybug, which is a pretty polyphagous, so it feeds on a lot of different host plants. So you can find it on a lot of things. You can go to the next slide. Now, again, just because you find something white and waxy doesn't necessarily mean it's a mealybug, right? So mealybugs, like we saw in that past image, if they didn't have that waxy layer, it just looks like a blob, all right? It just looks like a single kind of shape. Whereas in this case, you can see kind of those legs kind of tucked under it. You can see these large eyeballs. You can almost see like what's the shape of a head, right? And so this, what also really helps is looking at the behavior of the insect. So if you were to approach this insect, they would actually quickly go to the opposite side of the stem as if trying to avoid you. So they do a very quick lateral movement. We call these plant hoppers. And this one happens to be the citrus flathead plant hopper, which the nymphs can produce wax. So just because you see that wax, again, it doesn't mean mealybugs. In this case, the plant hopper, and they can, jump and disperse much quicker and more easy. So if you're looking at containment, you might want to consider strongly kind of bagging these and removing them, whereas mealybugs, if you're very careful, you could potentially, move them without having to, fully contain them. I can go on to the next slide. And so this contrasts now with some of our scale insects, right? So this is a T scale, which gets on camellias and a whole lot of other typically ornamental trees or shrubs. And again, now you can see a whole lot of waxy filaments around. Going to the next slide. We have another example of scale insects, and this is the false oleander scale, which gets on oleander, and again on several different trees and shrubs. An important thing to consider here is that these scales, as matures, they don't move around, whereas mealybugs, even as matures, they are moving around. And another thing is that both of these types of scales that we just saw here are considered armored or hard scales. They do not produce any honeydew, whereas our mealybugs do. Next slide. So when you're looking for identifying your mealybugs, I highly recommend checking out this guide. If you just literally Google search mealybugs and mealybug lookalikes of the southeastern United States, you will find this field guide. It's not super comprehensive, but it's probably going to capture most of the common mealybugs and mealybug lookalikes that you're going to encounter. And again, it's going to tell you things about the type of host plants that it infests, the size, distinguishing features, and so on and so forth. Next slide. So actually measuring the insect can help a lot. So whether you're trying to identify it yourself or you're trying to submit it to someone like me to identify for you, it helps to have something in there that gives us a reference in terms of size. So here's a really, as a millimeter, each increment is 1 millimeter. So it's just over 3 millimeters in length for one of the matures. We go on to the next slide.
Is this on the Coleus that you received?
Yes. Yeah, this is on the Coleus that I received. Yeah, and I snapped, or this is either on the Coleus or it was on the Salvia. So I received both Coleus and Salvia, and both were infested with what seemed like the same type of mealybug.
Can you change so you said 3 or 4 milliliters. What is that in inches?
3 or 4 millimeters. I can have one of my other panelists research that maybe real quickly and and get back to us here in a second.
You're showing your Canadian roots
we
here.
don't know the metric system, Irfan.
Well, actually, if you even look at this guide uses millimeters.
It's 0.16 inches approximately for 4 millimeters.
So if you can, what is that as a fraction? Because I don't know if you can find 0.16 on a.
Man.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's why it's like not that easy. But anyway.
It's like less than a quarter of an inch. Yeah.
Yeah,
small.
less than a quarter of an inch. But if you can measure a little bit more precisely, then it can usually be an identifying feature of that mealybug. So if we go to the next one, but again, also looking at those.
4/25.
4/25. It needs to be
4/25.
divisible. It needs to be divisible by 4.
Well, the original thing that it gave me was 1600ths. So obviously 0.16, 16 over 100. So this says
okay.
4 over 25.
Hey, Irfan, next time you make a photograph, I will be happy to give you a penny or something that you use as a scale.
Put next to it. Sounds good. Yeah, because all I have is.
You need a scale for your scale, Irfan.
Yeah, right. Use a scale for my scale. I would use a Canadian penny, but we got rid of pennies like 6 years ago. Canada doesn't have pennies; they just round up and round down now. But anyway, you can go on to the next slide. Oh yeah, we're on the next slide. All right, so then we also want to look at the terminal wax filaments, right? So again, here you can see it's relatively even. They're not long, they're not super long, they're relatively even. So again, using those kinds of features, you can go on to the next slide. Based on that guide, right, it kind of concludes as we're looking at the citrus mealybug. And if we go on to the next slide, you can see this is the current, I guess you could say, known host range for the citrus mealybug. Now, mind you, this kind of review was done in Egypt, so there are maybe some plants that are more relevant here that they did not test on or did not look at. And I was hoping to use these mealybugs in a insecticide trial on hibiscus, and hibiscus is not listed on here. So I threw some on hibiscus, and they've colonized the flower pretty quickly. Now we'll actually have to see if they complete a life cycle, right? So it's one thing for them to go on there and feed. It's another thing for them to actually reproduce on that host plant. So I guess I'll keep you all posted if I find out it reproduces on hibiscus. That'll be an interesting piece of information to know, because I couldn't find anywhere else whether it specifically gets on hibiscus. Now, in terms of management, yeah.
What you put on it, I don't know whether that will will use hibiscus as a host, but I have seen plenty of mealybugs on hibiscus, especially for hibiscus under a lot of shade, and that seems to be just like heaven for mealybugs. So
yes, yeah. So one of the more
heaven for many things.
yeah, even for humans. Yeah. There is, specifically a hibiscus mealybug.
Yeah.
So there is, or it's called the pink hibiscus mealybug. It's a little bit more commonly found on hibiscus, and hence why it's called that. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other mealybugs that go on there too. We have done some insecticide trials on mealybugs. I'm just going to show some data that we have rather than kind of doing a full review of all insecticide trials. But we have found, dinotefuran or safari works very well as a drench, right? So it gives you very good control. But if you are no longer allowed to use neonicotinoids, which might be a good number of you, or that's all you've been using and you want to rotate things. There's a new product called Ventigra by BASF, and that's our 4.8 fluid ounces per 100 gallons applied twice on a weekly interval. And you can see it also provided very good control. You compare that to the untreated check, say at day 14. You can see untreated check is about 74, whereas the Ventigra has 0.3 on average of all the ones we counted. So very good control. Going to the next one.
Erfang, the Altus number
Yes.
5, Altus there, that's a insect growth regulator, right?
No, it's in the same, it's a similar group to neonicotinoids. So it is an acetylcholine. Whatever
Okay.
agonist. Yeah,
All right.
it acts through the nervous system.
Should we mention that a disclaimer here that mentioning of any trademark names and stuff does not necessarily mean endorsement?
Correct. Thank you for saying that. Yes. Yeah. So I'm not particularly endorsing these products. These are products that we've had the opportunity to test within the last couple of years and that we've seen some efficacy on. So this is a second trial as well that, again, Ventigra appeared to work quite effectively. And you can see this other product, Pradia or Pradia, that one's by OHP. Again, not a specific endorsement, just based on our results, appears to provide some very good control. And this is one of those examples where, we don't label our plants with the treatment that we're treated with. We have numbers on them, so that way we're not kind of biasing when we're making observations. But you could tell which ones were applied with Pradia by the end, because they looked very clean compared to many of the other treatments. There are some others in this group that provide a suppression, but if you're looking for good control, so far those two products in our trials seem to be quite effective.
What's the difference between Vent 4 and Vent 7, the treatment 3 and 4?
Yeah, so those are two different rates. That was the probably the 4.8 fluid ounces per 100 gallons, and 7 is 7 or 7 point something fluid ounces per 100 gallons. So that's kind of like the labels we used. This publication is in arthropod management tests, so that's open source, freely available. You can go look it up, and I have all the specific rates, application date information, how we applied. All that information is in there. So if you want to look at more specific details, that is readily and freely available.
Erfang, do you have anything else to mention about those treatments?
No, that is all.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Oh, it's my time. This is what I call that Meng Meng pretend to be Dr. Ong time. Since Dr. Ong, it just got bogged down in some other duties and can't be with us today. So this is, this spring has been pretty wet, and in 2 weeks ago, by the way, y'all could go check our previous recording on some of the topics that we mentioned 2 weeks ago, or last week, or 3 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago. We have the recording every week. We talk about some things, timely topics. Every week is different. So make sure that when you register for the weekly chat, you register for all those 4 dates. Click on those dates and then do the registration. So instead of sending you 4 links, that's one of our ways of doing it. So when you see, obviously there's something kind of wrong with this daylily plant. And if you look at these, there's these kind of like just, these yellow spots and stuff. And this is the best part. This is the best part of this rust, is that when you mainly that they have these protruding little kind of almost like a protostules that's sticking out, and when you rub it on your hand or against a white tissue paper, that the rust get on your hand or get on the paper, and sometimes you see this kind of lesions. And of course there's sometimes if it gets severe, that the whole leaf or majority part of the leaf what just die, showing that color. Dr. Steve Van and Dr. Jim Robbins at University of Arkansas has a very good publication, and I have the link here. And if you go to the panel, go to the GoToWebinar panel, there is a handout. You click on the handout and you could download their publication. So this is a picture showing in their publication, in their daylily rust publication. It shows the stages of daylily rust development. The underside of the leaves. So this is the initial stage and goes, to the later stages. And sometimes if you look at the daylily rust, you may, and this is a leaf streak disease, you're like, oh, what's the difference? You may not see the much difference, but this is where I, these two are the daylily rust. These 5 leaves are a symptom of leaf streak disease. But I'm going to go back to this picture. So daylily rust is going to get you the rusty look. It's going to give you, the yellow or orangish body, it will get on your hand or a tissue, versus leaf streak disease, it will not. So on this publication, there are recommendations for fungicide applications. University of Arkansas used to have a web page that shows the more. They did a trial that showed some of the more resistant cultivars. And I'm in the process. They kind of took it down, their web page, but I'm in the process of getting that list of resistant cultivars from the author. So once I have that, everyone in the audience will get a copy today. Right now, what you could do is go to the handout on the GoToWebinar panel and download that publication. That's it. That's it for our information today. Yankee, since you're the no.
Wait.
That's not it. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry.
I can give you some comments on.
I forgot to say that I'm actually saving the best to last. So I'm actually saving the best to last. So Dr. Bowling.
So if I added some comments on daylily, because I have a daylily in my garden, and actually I tested a couple things the management practice recommended. If you see those rust in your daylily, you're going to see next year for sure. Okay, the rust will be there. It'll be show up in the spring next year. Okay, and I tried 1 year without fungicide. I removed all that material at the initially. That's one of the methods we can reduce inoculum of the rust, but it failed. There's no leaf. The end of the season, and because there's no leaf, there's not many flowers. Okay, so you can remove all the symptoms show up. You can remove kind of old leaves out of it, dispose it. That's one way. But really, if you didn't knocking down with the fungicide, I mean, your daylily will be very stressed, and there is no flower. If you have no flower in the spring, why you keep the daylily? So it doesn't make sense. Either you remove completely and plant a new one without this any. It's not the susceptible host to rust. Or if you want to keep it, put some fungicide in, and then the timing is really important. Okay, and if you see it and you don't wait, it just apply. And I tested some QI fungicide or strobilurin fungicide. This is really working well. Like one application will take care of it. Okay. But if when you see those pictures, the late stages, the fungicide, even if you use fungicide, that late stage was not very helpful. So the early spring, you have experienced rust, and you can see it's kind of lesions start in the old leaves first. Don't wait and just apply very little. You only need very little of the chemicals with this hand, some spray bottle. You put it in there, and then you just spray. Will take care of those disease. So it's easy to control with the fungicide, but if you wait too long or you pray for good well-being, it doesn't work. So that's kind of 2 cents.
Well, thank you, Youngie. Becky, you ready to start?
I am. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I did want to say that I think next week we need to talk about this because I'm interested in it. So, Irfan, this is what I think we should talk about next week.
Sounds good. I currently only see your first slide, but I'm assuming you're talking about your second slide there.
Yes. Oh, why did it paused my screen sharing? Hold on. There we go.
There.
It's like auto pausing my screen sharing. I don't know if that's something that's happening over my head or not. Let's try again.
Oh, there. Yeah. Okay. Here we go.
Okay. Now it's pausing it again. I'm not sure what's happening. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it open like this because apparently when I try to go to full screen, it doesn't like it. So, can you guys see enough of it if I do this?
Yep. Yeah, it works.
Okay. I can see your murder hornet.
Yes, you can see my murder hornet. So this is what I think we should talk about next week. Just a little proposition there. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about a topic that I have discussed at a couple of conferences here in the state and even out of the state over the last few months, which is alternative options for when we cannot or choose not to use glyphosate or Roundup. And this has been a topic because we've had a couple of cities now that have restricted the use of glyphosate on their city properties. And then I've also had some landscapers contact me kind of saying, what do I do if my clientele says, don't use this on my property? And so, I wanted to kind of have a little discussion around some of the alternatives. The EPA has not restricted the use of this product at all. If you are curious, there are some new decisions or proposed interim decisions on some other common herbicides that we use in the landscape, including the primary triazines, which includes atrazine and simazine. And if you visit the EPA website in December, January, they posted an interim decision restricting the use of simazine in residential landscapes and lowering the acceptable rate of atrazine. So those are some real changes that are happening or that have been proposed with those landscape products. And so you might kind of visit the EPA website and kind of check that out a little bit. I always start by kind of re-emphasizing the importance of integrated weed management, making sure that you have a holistic program to preventatively, culturally reduce weed pressure in the landscapes that you're managing. And then when it comes to alternatives to glyphosate, one of the things that makes glyphosate—
Becky,
yeah.
Did you show your screen or show the PowerPoint? If you click on show your screen, you may be able to
do it more easily. Okay,
yeah,
let me try.
To do the whole screen.
Let's try.
Yeah. And now click on slideshow.
Better?
Much better. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that makes glyphosate kind of a unique product and a unique tool for our herbicide arsenal is that it is both a non-selective herbicide, meaning that it does not discriminate about what it controls, and it is also a systemic herbicide, which means that it will translocate throughout the plant. And unfortunately, if we remove that product from our list of options, we end up with a list of non-selective herbicides that do not have systemic activity, meaning that they are contact herbicides. They will primarily kill or control or injure the plant tissue that they come directly in contact with. Or we have systemic herbicides that are selective. And so we have to be a little bit more creative or specific with how we, with the post-emergence herbicides that we use. And so it can kind of complicate things a little bit. So I wanted to start off talking a little bit about just other non-selective herbicide options. And we can kind of categorize these into kind of two main categories. We have our synthetic herbicides, conventional non-selective contact herbicides, and then we also, all of our quote-unquote organic or non-conventional herbicides also fall into the non-selective contact category. So this first one, glufosinate, this is one that a lot of companies, a lot of distributors are pushing as an alternative to Roundup, and the label on this actually I don't believe has been updated yet in the CDMS label database. So this product is actually owned by BASF now instead of Bayer, and there's also a different formulation of this called Cheetah. And glufosinate is a non-selective post-emergence herbicide. It is going to have primarily contact activity, but it's what we call locally systemic, which means that it will translocate some within the leaves. But it's not going to translocate through the entire plant. And, you know, this is important to be mindful of if you're primarily targeting mature, established perennial weeds that may have extensive below ground root systems or storage structures like tubers and rhizomes. This product and products like it are not going to translocate into those structures to help control the plant, but they can help you control the vegetation that you see coming up above ground. So, you know, we would probably use most of these products when we're looking to, you can use it for trimming, edging, you can use it some in landscape beds, and they're a little bit, when you're less likely to injure adjacent vegetation. And then a lot of these products are going to be the most effective on relatively small annual weeds. And another example, yeah, I have this in here because I had somebody that told me that they didn't want to use glyphosate anymore, so they are switching to paraquat. I do not recommend that. Paraquat is a very dangerous, high-risk product to use, restricted use product, so please do not switch to that. So another option for a non-selective contact herbicide is going to be Reward or Diquat is the name that we use for the active ingredient. And so this is, again, a post-emergence contact weed killer. It's going to primarily control small annual weeds. It's not going to be very effective on larger weeds that are established or perennial weeds. This is going to be the most effective when you get really good spray coverage. So because these are contact herbicides, when you are using them, the coverage on the plant is going to be really important because they're not going to be absorbed and translocated the way that some of our other herbicides will. Advantages to this product is that it controls things pretty rapidly, particularly our small seedlings, and it's relatively low cost compared to some of these other products. Okay, it also tends to be less temperature sensitive than some of these other herbicides, working well in a pretty broad range of temperatures. Here's another one, Scythe, that you may or may not be familiar with, and Scythe is a formulation of something called pelargonic acid. This is going to be, again, a post-emergence contact herbicide. It will not have systemic activity. It's not going to be as effective in cold weather, but when you do use it, you will see very, very rapid response. So very visible symptoms on the weeds that you're targeting in like less than 30 minutes in some cases, depending on your temperatures. This is not a certified organic option, but a lot of people consider this to be kind of an alternative to traditional herbicides. We commonly refer to it as a herbicidal soap. Can be a little pricey and it's a little stinky. Some people really like the smell of it. I'm not personally a big fan, but it's definitely pretty malodorous.
Think about it. The active AI is pelargonic acid, so that's from geranium.
Yeah, I like the way it smells. I'm a Scythe fan.
You like it?
I like the way it smells.
There's some people that really love the smell of it, you know. So again, going to be the most effective on immature annual broadleaf seedlings. Okay. A couple of other formulations if we're looking for more organic options. These are OMRI certified options. We've got another formulation of a pelargonic acid called Axe. And this one is going to function very similarly to Scythe and how Scythe works, but it is going to be organic certified. Then we have Final Sand, which is a mixture of different fatty acid soaps. They are similarly going to have some contact activity. So these products all kind of work in the same way, where they destroy the integrity of the leaf structure and the cell walls. They kind of dissolve those protective structures that keep the leaf stable and protected. And then another option here is the press, which is a concentrate of 2 short-chain fatty acids. So this is one I get a lot of questions about, which is vinegar. Does vinegar work? Can I use vinegar? So what we see is a lot of times this kind of concentrated form of acetic acid. And typically for effective weed control, we're looking at 20% or higher. Again, these are going to be non-selective contact herbicides with very similar activity to some of the ones we've already discussed. They're going to be most effective on seedling annual broadleaf weeds. Good coverage is going to be important, and similarly to scythe and some of these others, we're going to see really rapidly visible symptoms. Now, here's kind of the catch. Just because these products may be labeled as natural or organic does not necessarily mean that they're safe and you should go out and take a bath in them. Okay, most of these products containing vinegar and some of these botanical oils have a much higher dermal toxicity than some of our synthetic herbicides, and they actually carry a signal word of danger, which is the highest associated acute risk to or acute toxicity to humans. When using these natural products, we want to avoid contact with skin or eyes. If you're using a product of the acetic acid that's a 20% or greater concentration, it can actually be corrosive to tin, aluminum, iron, and concrete, and it can even cause blindness. There was a news article a while ago in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Santa Fe switched to an all IPM approach to their pest management as a city a couple of years ago, and they have been using a concentrated acetic acid as an alternative to Roundup. And one of their grounds crew was out spraying weeds, and the product ate through his spray equipment and actually caused some severe burns on his skin. So again, just because something is labeled as natural or organic, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't treat it with the same caution or awareness that we would treat any other pesticide product. So I really wanted to talk about that. There is a fact sheet that was produced by Scott Nolte and some other Texas A&M faculty, kind of answering some frequently asked questions on glyphosate. And so, you know, if this is something that you get questions about from your clientele, you can download a PDF copy from AgriLife and kind of keep these with you to help answer questions that you may get. And there's a lot of great extension publications out there kind of outlining additional alternatives and things like that. So that's just, you know, some things that I wanted to share. And of course, if you guys have some specific follow-up questions, feel free to shoot me an email or post it on the Facebook page, and we can ask more about or talk more about that.
Thank you, Becky. I just want to, you know, show this slide where on Facebook, chat with Aggie Greens. That's where y'all can, you know, submit questions or just